Brad Johnson, Director of Hamilton County Environmental Services.
Okay, thank you. And I note that we are joined by folks via Zoom. Welcome all to the meeting. All right, we are going to go to the, unless there are opening comments, Michelle, I don't think we have opening comments, to the clerk's report and the minutes. You have all had an opportunity to review the minutes. Are there any additions, deletions? In which case, I'm going to entertain a motion to approve of the minutes.
Just one minor correction on page 5, where it says 4 voted for Tony, 3 voted for Tony.
Okay.
Leave long statement.
Okay, thank you. Any other corrections? All right, motion to approve?
Yeah, well, and I wasn't here, but I watched the whole thing on video.
Thank you,
So I guess, even though I watched it all, I could approve or not, but I guess I should still recuse myself.
Would someone else like to make a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained?
And I recused myself, I was absent.
Okay, so recusal and recusal.
And I was absent, but I don't know how that works for me.
Okay.
I just watched it in
Well,
hindsight.
that's fine. So we've got a majority that have approved of the minutes.
Yeah.
So I think we're good to go. General public comment. So I have a number of speakers cards. I'll remind everybody, you've got the pleasure of the floor for 3 minutes. I'm going to do these in the order in which I receive them. So forgive me if they're not in the order that you've filled them out. Tim Mara is first. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm here speaking for myself and for Oxbow. I'm an advocate for planning. I'm a graduate of UC's College of Design, Architecture, Art, and Planning. And as a student, a half-century ago, in the planning program, I learned that goal setting and a list of specific actions to achieve those goals are essential elements of a good plan. A good plan is a roadmap to where we want to be in the next year, 5 years from now, and beyond, and how to get there. The draft update as it currently stands is a very weak tweak on specifics and desperately needs the additional provisions drafted by Bob Geddard. I'm reminded of the 1907 quote from Daniel Burnham, who was a founder of modern day planning, who says, "Make no little plan, for a little plan has a way of becoming no plan at all." In other words, think big, or little will be accomplished. The state has mandated that this district update its plan every 5 years, but if we merely follow the outline provided by the state, the end result would not be a vision for the future, but little more than a report on where we have been. A look back is important, but what we really need is a call to significant action in the future. Bob has suggested additions that would make the document you are working on a true plan. His list of additions are basic, tangible measures for universal trash collection, universal access to recycling, and recycling of organics. The additions would at least begin to address a myriad of problems such as unauthorized roadside dumping, rapid use of landfill capacity, and pollution of our air from methane emissions. Bob's proposals are also flesh out the process for applying the siting criteria included in the local rules, and his proposed increase in tipping fees for out-of-district waste would provide revenue for innovative programs for waste reduction. That's the kind of thinking that ought to have been in the so-called plan years ago. And the time has come for Hamilton County to act now to catch up with the realities of solid waste management. This is no time to think small. Bob's additions are not self-implementing. Future action will be needed to implement each of them, but this is a good and necessary start to a meaningful plan to protect public health and the environment. Without these additions, the district will languish, at best, as a reactionary bureaucracy taking tiny 1% steps forward and not a leader. We don't need another small plan, which would be the equivalent of no plan. This is an opportunity for vision. That's what planning is all about. The time for real action is now. I urge you to embrace each of Bob's proposed additions to the plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Marie Kokosis.
Yes, Marie. Thank you. It's Marie Kokosis, and I am speaking here today on behalf of the League of Women Voters of the Cincinnati area. And okay, I'm speaking on behalf of the League of Women Voters of the Cincinnati area. The Natural Resources Committee of the League of Women Voters of the Cincinnati area has 3 strengthening proposals for the solid waste plan, the 5-year update. Number 1, establish universal trash collecting and universal recycling and organics collection. Universal trash collection will address illegal dumping and the illegal use of business and personal trash bins where individuals actively choose not to contract for trash service. Also, illegal dumping is a blight on the community that can cause fires, lower property values, and increase the devaluation of a neighborhood. Universal co-collection of trash, recycling, and organics will increase the diversion rates due to the immediate convenience of access to recycling and composting bins. This proposal does not require recycling, but rather offers access to collection bins, which in turn will offer increased usage of containers and increases the diversion rate overall. Capture of organics from landfill would reduce methane and CO2. Rumpke emits more methane than any other landfill in the nation, I understand. Second one is to revise the disposal fees. This proposal would increase the Tier 2 fee from $2 a ton to $4 a ton to increase the cost of out-of-district waste, which currently constitutes between 50 and 53%, I believe, of the waste being disposed of in the Hamilton County Solid Waste District. The higher cost is intended to discourage out-of-district disposals with the goal of protecting the landfill capacity for Hamilton County residents. The extra revenues from the $2 a ton increase on Tier 2 is estimated to be $2.48 million annually. These funds could be dedicated to fund, among others, expansion of the infrastructure expenses of the countywide organics program, possibly a private partnership with support to municipalities and townships for the collection startup expenses. Also, the expansion of institutional and school recycling program could be funded with some of this money. The last thing I would like to say that we are proposing as an amendment is to establish a siting strategy and a siting committee. Previous rules that were adopted by the Solid Waste District did not establish a siting strategy or a siting committee. The siting strategy, if adopted, would be complementary and supportive to the existing rules previously adopted. The strategy provides the framework and procedures that were not included in the first adopted set of rules. A siting committee governs the process of receiving applications and carries the process through review and to its final decision. A siting committee is permissible under Ohio state law. Thank you very much. As I said, these are from the Natural Resources Committee of the League of Women Voters of the Cincinnati area.
Thank you, Marie. Jim O'Reilly. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm honored to be back again. I'm one of the founders of this group, and I had a very interesting time while I was here. My comments are specific to how the plan needs to be updated and how I don't believe the hearing was appropriate in dealing with the Bond Road landfill. I recommend that you seriously consider adopting Mr. Geddes' suggestion. Now, in saying that, I don't speak for the College of Medicine or the College of Law, where I'm associated. I can't speak for the City of Wyoming because I'm no longer on council. I can't speak for the OKI Regional Council of Governments because I'm no longer on the Executive Committee. And what else am I not on? But this is one of those circumstances. This is one of those circumstances where we need to make a recognized change in something that is existing and about to get worse. What's going to get significantly worse, in my judgment, as a scholar in the field for many years, what's about to get worse is the Bond Road materials, air and water, are going to have a very significant negative effect on the western side of Cincinnati. I think we need to look at what other communities have looked at the health issues, look at the economic issues and the like. We've got to do a better job for that. And so for that reason, I'm emphasizing, please consider how the improvement of the plan for the next 5 years can take into account what's been successful elsewhere. Do not stay with our heads in the sand. going on by changing the plan. So we really do consider public health, do consider long-term, particularly for PFAS, environmental consequence. We do take into account some of the issues that are not being addressed in the plan as it is. I'm not saying the plan is terrible. I'm saying that you can adapt it, you can modify it, but don't leave it as it is. Don't nibble around the edges and make marginal changes. Look at what others have done in other communities, in other parts of Ohio and elsewhere. Think about how we can improve the responsibility we have to, how do we have a responsibility to the public? The broader public needs a beneficial approach by this committee and by this county. We need to take into serious account Mr. Geddes' suggestions and move forward with those. I realize I'm almost out of time, but thank you for letting me come back after all these years. You do need to have a responsibility to change that plan and to make positive changes, and I appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Jerry Krause. Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Jerry Krause, and I'm speaking today as a private citizen, rather an active private citizen. I support everything that was said before, so I won't repeat it for you. But I do want to add a couple of things. One is I was impressed by the fact that Bob's recommendations included not just trash, but also what we call garbage. Back in before probably most of you were born, the city did collect garbage or food waste, and they probably, it was probably helpful. And also, it would reduce some of the problems that you have with water runoff, because there was a time when you didn't put your garbage and run it down before they had, what's that? Disposals, right. And the other thing I want to say is, it's great, anybody who has suffered this summer with climate change has to do something and be specific about what your plans. Any plan is not good unless it has specific details. And I would add one thing, it has to also have oversight. I don't know whether that was included in your recommendation, but definitely oversight, because the best laid plans don't work if you don't have people making sure that they happen. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is Tom Declan. Welcome.
How you guys doing? My name is Declan Tom.
Oh, I'm sorry. I read that. I thought there was a comment there. My bad.
But yeah, I want to, speaking for myself, and I want to echo the comments of for me. I also want to show my support for the proposals to the plan update drafted by Mr. Geddard. From my very basic understanding of it, I think there's an opportunity to double the lifespan of our landfill and double our diversion rate, and I think that's an opportunity that we should pass up. And I personally don't think we can afford to keep putting it off, and on our landfill filling up pretty fast. And anything we can do to increase its lifespan, I think we should. And yeah, I want to show my support. So thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Oh, I'm sorry. Question: are you representing yourself or an organization?
Just myself.
It's yourself. All right, thank you. Sally Dannemiller is next.
Hello, Sally Dannemiller, and I'm representing the Sierra Club Miami Group. The revisions before you today, written by Bob, include universal trash collection, universal access to recycling, universal access to organic collection, Tier 2 tipping fee increase, and a siting framework. All are necessary and reasonable. People in this room at this U-shaped table have even said that they're reasonable. And in order to do that, we need to adopt them to create a waste diversion from our landfill. We should embrace these initiatives in order to achieve zero waste, align with the Green Cincinnati Plan, and consider the future for all of us in this region. We cannot wait. 2030, when this 5-year plan would be over, is much too late. There are people here today, individuals and representatives of townships and municipalities, who are willing to have a vision and roll up their sleeves. We can either pay a little now or pay heavily in the future, through our wallets, through our environment, and through our health. There was a call for public input by the people here in this room, and it is here. The public input is here. People want to divert waste. People want the landfills to last and not create more dumps in our region, maybe in the surrounding counties. In 2015, 45 years were left at the Colerain landfill, I've heard. Today, in our report, in our draft plan, it says only 23 years are left. That math doesn't add up. We can be leaders or we can follow the consultants and others who work on both sides of the aisle. I vote for being a leader. Thank you.
Thank you. My understanding is we've got 2 folks that are joining us virtually that would like to speak. Ruth, I don't know what your last name is.
Probably not iPad.
If there's a Ruth that is joining virtually that would like to speak, please make yourself known. Ruth,
Yes, I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
we can. You've got the pleasure of the floor for 3 minutes.
Thank you. I'm requesting that each of the serious issues around landfill regulation receives full consideration and discussion before resubmission of the plan to the Ohio EPA. Luckily, citizens group in Hamilton County are providing proactive input and proposing rules that can protect against costly and harmful conditions down the road. I'm also requesting that representatives from local environmental nonprofits be added to this subcommittee. Their perspectives would expand the knowledge base and thus benefit the district in its considerations. 3, each of the citizen-generated rules in the Getter and League of Women Voters proposal should be given full consideration and incorporated into the 5-year solid waste plan. I'd like to highlight a couple of the measures in the proposal. One is the universal recycling organics collection, which will increase diversion rates due to the immediate convenience of the access to recycling and composting bins. In supporting this measure, I'd like to draw your attention to the King County, Washington 2022 solid waste plan. And they have a pay-as-you-throw, that's PAYT, in that the more materials customers divert into recycle or compost, the lower their cost for overall solid waste services. So they have 3 color-coded bins, 1 each for trash. Trash is the most expensive. Recycling, that's cheaper, and composting is the least expensive. And they have been doing this since 2000. It's either 5 or 8. I forgot to write it on here, but I know I have relatives doing it. It's really easy to do. And also, number 2, composted organic materials are critical for long-term resiliency because of their many environmental benefits. They divert yard waste from landfills, reducing environmental impacts associated with landfilling this material. For example, CO2 and methane emissions, PFAS, and other contamination that might enter the groundwater from toxic leachate. Number 3, recycles organics to create compost, a beneficial amendment for depleted soils. Methane emissions from organics decaying in landfills are a significant source of greenhouse gases. Methane is 80 times more powerful as a greenhouse gas than is CO2. But by contrast, healthy soils are one of our most powerful tools for removing CO2 from the atmosphere and sequestering it in the soil. And 4, most people don't really have room to compost at home. We think of ourselves that we have a backyard, but many people don't. And also many like myself are physically challenged and just can't manage to compost, but we want to do it. We want to be a part of the solution. Also, I'd like to look at Appendix P1 from Getter's list about the siting committee. Will give authority to accept or reject out-of-district waste flows. I don't really understand why we do that with the diminished years of space left in the landfill, but exponential waste increases will likely shorten that significantly. We take all the risk, they take all the benefits. I just want to say we need to do everything we possibly can right now to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and water pollution. If we fail to take these measures, how will we feel looking back 10 years from now when massive migrations are occurring due to water and food scarcity, and our economies are overwhelmed with the cost of exponentially increasing destructive weather events, and people are suffering globally? Thank you.
Thank you. Ruth, what is your last name?
Hardy, Hardy.
Yeah, typically we would have you, send, did you get that last name? You got it. Okay, very good. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
So Jean Nightingale,
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
we can hear you.
Okay, so I'm Jean Nightingale, and I'm speaking as a member of the Sierra Club Miami group, the Executive Committee, and a member of the League of Women Voters Natural Resources Committee, Chair of Women's City Club's Environmental Action Group. And I would like to support the proposals recommended by the Solid Waste Caucus to add provisions to the district's revised solid waste management plan to improve sustainable waste management in Hamilton County. You know, the World Bank, in its latest report on global solid waste management, warns us of massive increases in global waste and its disastrous effects on climate change. We're doomed to choke on our own waste. Without improvements in solid waste management, global waste will increase 70% to 3.4 billion tons by 2050. We need to raise the success of sustainable waste management practices. These practices are being codified and regulated in an increasing number of regions in the world as a way of reducing the amount of waste and minimizing the environmental impacts of the materials we use. We all need to set new targets for the waste sector with respect to recycling, financial sustainability, citizen awareness, zero waste efforts, organics management, and rehabilitation of contaminated sites. Rumpke's landfill is one of the largest in the country and by far the biggest in the state of Ohio. It contains 63 million tons of waste and a capacity to add another 100 million tons, according to the EPA. But due to unnecessary dumping of organic materials, which currently makes up 27% of the landfill, Rumpke produces more methane than any other landfill in the nation. So I urge the Hamilton County Solid Waste Management Policy Committee to recommend that the Hamilton County Commissioners adopt the rules concerning universal trash collection, including recycling and organics, and add these to the existing rules listed in Appendix Q of the district's revised solid waste management plan. Thank you.
Thank you. I have another speaker's card from in the room, Lisa Wynn.
Hello, my name is Lisa Wynn, and I represent the group called Ditch the Dump. I'm reading this from the Hamilton County R3 Source Vision Statement and their mission statement. Hamilton County R3 Source provides ethical, environmental leadership to equitably promote the public good through innovative and responsible strategies for the management of all waste as a resource that leads to a society that generates zero waste. Mission statement being, our mission is to reduce reliance on landfills through waste reduction, reuse, and recycling programs. To accomplish this mission, Hamilton County R3 Source works closely with communities, schools, businesses, and institutions to provide technical assistance, education, and tools to capture valuable resources through recycling and composting. This is our vision statement as well, and I truly hope that this is achievable. Our group of over 1,700 citizens and it's growing. I have an additional 67 signatures opposing the landfill. lost track here. The additions to the plan, proposed by Bob should have been instituted years ago, including the siding strategy. It's time to play catch-up. We are not going to get it done by pushing the answers into the future. The recent article named Ohio as the top state for composting based on a combination of factors, including the most compact composting facilities. So why are we fighting it? Mr. DiPuccio, I appreciate your service, but I object to your vote on these additions based on your and Karen Lucan's business contracting with Rumpke. This is a conflict. And I happen to be on the US EPA website, and this jumped out at me. Ultimate test of a man's conscience may be his willingness to sacrifice something today for future generations whose words of thanks will not be heard. Thank you.
Thank you. We have one last speaker's card, or rather, someone virtually joining, Rich McVeigh. Are you there? Rich McVeigh, are you there virtually? Okay. You there? You're unmuted if you would like to speak. We can't hear you, Rich. Let's make sure you're unmuted on your end, because you are unmuted on our end.
He's
I
reading.
regret that we cannot hear you. I'm afraid we're going to move on. Sorry about that. I don't know what the technical difficulty is there, but I hope it's not on our end. Thank you for joining them. All right. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for those that are joining. Our next item is the revenue update analysis. Michelle.
Yes, so in attachment E, we have a look at tipping fees from 2022 and 2021 in comparison through the end of July. If you compare 2022 to 2021, we have had about a 6.8% increase in revenue, which is about $139,000. The in-district waste has had about a 4,000 ton decrease, which really, if you look at the percentage, less than 1% change. So it's fairly consistent with 2021. The out-of-district, we've had a 9% increase in tonnage, and then the out-of-state, we've had about a 12% increase in tonnage compared to 2020.
Yeah, and I have a comment.
Yeah.
I make my usual comments every time we get to this page here. I note here too, out of district, in-state, 54% of our waste flows coming into the district. We'll have a conversation later on that. But I look back on our meeting notes, and I do make that comment every meeting, and you've heard me before. And I go back to our January 19th policy committee minutes, and it states, Mr. Gettert stated 57% of waste out of district. It does go up and down. And I also note that there is a lot of reliance on revenue of these waste streams. There seems to be an out-of-balance reliance on out-of-district waste streams. Mr. Gettert stated that we should look and at this and revise the plan. This is something to look at. So it's something that I noted in our January minutes. So to look at this with respect to our plan. So I'll be commenting on this later on.
Michelle, will you finish with your report?
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
No, that's just like a disturbing trend, the increases that we have to deal with.
All right, very good. We're going to move on to the policy items for discussion. The first one is the timeline for the plan update.
On the screen, this should be a very quick presentation.
received a memo about the conflict of interest. I wanna know when we're gonna discuss that.
Well, we can take that up at the end of the meeting, if you'd like.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, this is really to talk about the timeline for when things happen to plan. At the last meeting, Commissioner Dreehouse requested that, staff report out on the longest possible timeline, and then, some alternative timelines. So that's what this looks at. So this is the, I apologize, I don't know what happened with the presentation. So this is the Ohio EPA, timeline, and I know this is not the easiest to understand. We are right about here. We just received the comments from Ohio EPA, and, we're in this kind of open stretch here. But I've made it into a little bit easier to read timeline. So if we wanted to stretch out that Ohio EPA given timeline as long as we possibly could, we are, obviously just in here that we just received Ohio EPA's comments. The latest date that we could possibly start ratification is August 11th. And then the latest submission, to Ohio EPA would be November 9th, and then they would have until, February of 2024 to give us feedback. This is risky, though, to push it out this far, because if we wait this long to go out for ratification and the plan does not pass, then then Ohio EPA has to write our plan for us, basically. So I do not recommend this. I'm just showing you what the longest possible timeline would be. What I think would be the best timeline is if we pushed it. So right now we are at the Ohio EPA comments. In 6 months we start ratification. So and then ratification is 90 days, and then we would submit the plan to Ohio EPA, the ratified plan to Ohio EPA in June, assuming that it passes. If for some reason it doesn't pass, this plan gives us time. We can go in, make changes, and go back out for ratification. This timeline also gives us 6 months from now to get the plan ready for ratification. And I'll go into a little bit more detail what happens before ratification in the next slide. And then it also gives us 6 months from when the plan is ratified to when the plan would actually start. So it gives us time to get ready for that as well. So these are the required steps. I know they all look the same, so I apologize. So right now, this is where we are in the timeline, right? So we've had all that stuff that happened before. Now, we make changes to the plan. We start our 30-day comment period in January, and then have a public hearing in mid-February, and then make more changes based on those, and then at the March 15th, 2023 meeting, put the plan up to adopt or reject. There's some other notes in here, and this will be available as a PDF of other things that has to happen. It has to go to adjacent solid waste district. It has to go to Hamilton County Commissioners, all the municipalities and townships. It has to be published in a newspaper. It also has to go to the 50 largest industrial, commercial, and institutional waste generators and their trade associations. So a lot has to happen during that 30-day comment period. And I think that is it. So it would be helpful to staff if the policy committee makes a decision on when the timeline of when what we're going to shoot for. Obviously, you're not sticking yourself to that if something happens and we need to bump it from March to May. That we have a little bit of flexibility there, but it would be helpful to staff so that we know when we need to arrange for the public comment period and all of that. So I'd like some discussion and a decision on where you'd like to shoot for, possibly a resolution of what we're gonna shoot for, knowing that it would make it easier for us to plan for the plan.
Any comments to the time frame here that's been proposed? So we've got a recommended time frame from staff, a preferred time frame from staff. Are there any comments to that preferred time frame?
I'll just say I generally tend to put my support towards the professional staff that the district has, so my vote would go towards the preferred plan timeline. I also do want to acknowledge that I reviewed OEPA's comments, and congratulations to you and your team. Those are, for a very robust plan that a lot of effort went into. Those are very complimentary comments.
Thank you.
I support the, recommended plan of action with the thought that we may have some cushion time if we see some public comments, and if we see, in the public hearing that we need to make some adjustments, that we may need to adjust the plan, we need that, as a policy committee, we may need to implement or, adjust the plan in any way. The purpose of public comments and the purpose of a public hearing is to incorporate, something that we did not plan on, that we did not, contemplate, that there might be a surprise somewhere, and that we might need to consider in a policy committee meeting and incorporate in the plan. That might delay us a month or two. And so I would adopt the plan of action that the staff has generated with the thought that we might bump it back a month or two if we see any surprises.
I think that would work.
Right, I concur that, I generally too take recommendations from the professionals in the room. And so I'm happy to support the preferred plan, knowing that there's some flexibility built in.
I tend to agree with that. I do think that the public hearing, I don't know, I think that public hearing to make changes to plan, that Bob's talking about is a little bit truncated, but, if we need to expand that on the other end.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Good point.
All right, so Michelle, you're asking for us to have formal action, which we're happy to do. All right, so I'm gonna entertain a motion to approve of the preferred plan update timeline that's in our packet.
I'll make such a motion. I can second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, very good. Thank you, Michelle. Okay. Next, as is customary for the policy committee, when members have things they'd like to bring up for discussion, they are put on the agenda. So that, the next two items are those kinds of items. Bob has brought two things to our attention. One is the universal trash recycling and organics rules, and the other is the Tier 2 out-of-district fee increase. So Bob, I'm gonna ask you to, bring these up for discussion, and then we can, have discussion as needed within, the policy.
Yeah, did, Michelle wanna talk about the aspirational diversion goal, or did you wanna talk?
I said we could defer that to talk
Gotcha.
one more time to talk about it.
Gotcha, okay. Thank you, and thank you, Denise. I think I wanna talk about the universal waste and then the recycling and composting, and then the fee increase in that order there, if we may.
I think that's the order that we have them in.
Yeah, and I would like to note that on all three of them, I have proposed them in comments to the district, as far back as December 8th and March 25th and May 17th in written comments. And in May, our policy committee discussed all three topics and in the May meeting. And then 2 meetings ago, that was, we had a discussion on it, crowded for time, it got shoved to today. So just as a general thought pattern, it got crowded back to today. I'd like to give a general description of the proposal and then have general discussion about the topic. And the first one is the universal trash. And you might recall my presentation from back in May. The topic is that effective January 1st, 2024, which is 2 years away, a year and a half away, all Hamilton County, Ohio property owners and multifamily unit structure owners are required to contract or securely weekly trash service. If the local community does not directly provide or contract for the service, Enforcement will be provided by the Hamilton County Solid Waste Management District through contractual services from the Hamilton County Sheriff's Office. In theory, this would be less than 1% of the local community through the fact that most of the community is contracted for waste service. This is basically leakage. This is those that in the communities that have subscription services and not contracted through the township or the municipality. Most townships and municipalities have contracts that cover all their residents, and that's listed in our plan. But there are certain townships that do not contract, and it's up to the individual resident or property owner to contract out. And there are individuals that do not contract out, and they shop their waste, as I mentioned in the previous time. And some of those are businesses, and some of those are multifamily property owners. Some of those are individuals. And that when they shop their waste, they might be polite enough to find a trash container to put it in. They might find a business container to put it in, or they might illegally dispose of it in the ravines or the forest of the area or out on the roadside. It is a littering issue. There are multiple reasons why we have litter. This is one of the major reasons why we have litter. It is a component of the littering issues. It is not the single reason why we have litter, but it is a major component of why we have litter. And as we try to tackle litter and illegal dumping, this is one component and one way to tackle it. And so I propose this rule and feel that it is a simple enforcement mechanism, and ask for your consideration on the issue, your thoughts.
You wanna, can you roll through the other?
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
in the first item?
Yeah, this is uniquely tied to recycling and organics, so let me explain that and talk about that too. If effective January 2026, different rollout date than the trash would be that all solid waste haulers would be required to place recycling containers side by side with trash containers. So I find this nicely paired with what I just previously described on the trash collection. If everybody has trash collection, then 2 years later, we roll out the requirement that the solid waste haulers pair that with a recycling container. Now, there is no requirement in this ordinance for use of the recycling container. It is a requirement to provide the access to recycling. And you heard from public comments on this item here. All solid waste haulers are required to provide appropriate organics container, I'm reading the wrong line, required to provide appropriate recycling containers and collection service paired with trash collection where space is allowed, which must be hauled to a legitimate material recovery facility, including to communities that provide direct services, contracted services, or subscription services. Enforcement will be provided by the Hamilton County Solid Waste Management District contracted service from the Hamilton County Sheriff's Office. Again, in previous discussions, I feel that there is mechanics that can be worked out, and that's why I have effective date of January 1st, 2026. There is a time delay so that we can work with the district and the rollout date to work with the haulers, and particularly with Rumpke in particular in the receiving of this material. Rumpke being the largest hauler, but there are many other haulers too, that there would be a mechanical rollout scenario and several different meetings with the haulers to answer their questions, to work with the mechanics, to work with the issues involved, including the clause where site space allows, developing the rules that are involved in this scenario. And I have been through this. I have implemented this in several other communities. And so there are rules that could be mimicked from other communities. And a likewise rule that is identical, but appropriate organics container. So that, and that would be rolled out in 2028 when the infrastructure is in place for the collection of yard waste and food waste. And that is rolled out 4 years from now, so that, with the consideration of having infrastructure. None of this would roll out unless the infrastructure is in place. And the thought pattern is 2024, 2026, 2028. Those dates can be rolled back at any time, depending upon the infrastructure that's in place or not in place. And the final thought is that it would be a 3-container system at the residential and at the commercial end, at the trash, recycling, and organics collection. And from my research, there's over 7,000 communities that have embraced this type of approach. And I could take any questions. I can add more to it, but I don't want to take too much time.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Yeah.
So I think, and because we have had conversations related to these items before, I think there is general consensus. I shouldn't really speak for others. Let me speak for myself. I have general consensus that these are things that we should aspire to, and I think there might be general agreement on that. I think the question becomes, at what point do we start to think through the implementation of some of these things? And so I would like to hear from Michelle, because when you raise these issues, oftentimes it's in the context of the plan. And so I think if we were to formalize something to staff to say, here are some suggestions, if we could commonly agree on a direction that we went ahead and related to this, what is the time frame, what is the context for it? I mean, I think that's the thing that we grapple with here as a committee. And so, Michelle, could you help us understand, whether or not we are working on some of these things, whether or not there's even the capability for some, especially related to the organics, if there's the infrastructure there to move on this, and how it relates to what we currently see in the plan, so that I'm trying to level set, because I hear your frustration. I think we all have some frustration over discussing things more than once at these meetings.
Yeah.
And so I want to try to wrap our arms around that and figure out a path forward that we're all comfortable with, whether it's related to the plan or not, get some context from staff, and maybe Karen would like to weigh into, perhaps by way of process. But Karen, or Michelle, could you kind of help us work through some of this?
Absolutely. So one question for you about the recycling and organics. It's not clear, is that for residents only, like the trash is, or is that also commercial property?
Yeah. On the trash, I'm particularly focused on property owners of residential and multifamily.
Okay. What about for the recycling and the organic?
In my past conversations, I was focused on all commercial and residential.
Okay.
However, in subsequent conversations, I'm more focused on the residential and multifamily, and that can be tapered down. See how that works with the residential and multifamily. And when I've rolled this out in other communities, the haulers find interest in the commercial and will self-institute it in the commercial sector once you roll it out on the residential and multifamily.
Right.
So in answer to your question, kind of a long-winded answer, but I feel the rules, if they're focused on multifamily and residential, that's sufficient enough.
Okay, thanks. That helps me answer your question.
Yeah, and I'm kind of looking for, what are we already doing in this space? What should we be doing in this space? What can we be doing in this space? What infrastructure exists?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe this is not a conversation entirely for this meeting.
Yeah.
But if we could get some direction, if you, I guess, Michelle, could get some direction from this board as to how we would like to pursue some of the ideas, I think really that's where we need to head, so that we kind of formalize that, so that we've got a little, more parameters around the conversation, so it's not reiterating something, meeting to meeting.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So for some context, we do have in the plan, in the residential, in Appendix H, in the residential recycling infrastructure overview, we have some information about what percentage are, communities who have non-subscription recycling. So either they offer the recycling themselves or they contract for that service. And then those communities who have subscription recycling, which is really what Bob's getting at, is that you're trying to get them to where they have automatic. So, the last time we did the plan, our last reference year was 2014. We had 20 communities out of the 48 who were, subscription recycling communities. In our new plan, actually, just as of today, we have 14. So we have reduced that from 20 to 14. So we've worked with those communities. We worked with Colerain and Springfield and Reading. I think it might include Sharonville. It includes a handful of communities, where we have done what the kind of, at least for the recycling, the spirit of the recycling, trying to, work with the community to contract for curbside recycling. So we have had some movement in that space, and we do identify in the plan, these are the communities who have contracted waste and subscription recycling. To me, those are the low-hanging fruit. Those are the ones that would be very easy for them, just as Reading did earlier this year, add that to their contract for waste. They can now recycle. And then we have the other half who are townships, such as Anderson Township, Green Township, Sycamore Township are on there, who their residents subscribe for waste themselves. So it is harder to move those two, but we've done it. We worked with Springfield and Colerain to do that. So there is some, and we identify in the residential infrastructure that those communities who have non-subscription automatic recycling have a higher per ton curbside, you get more tonnage out of it. It's easier if you just have a cart at your curb than it is when you have to call in and subscribe for recycling, for sure. So we do identify in the plan that is, a need to move those communities towards that. And we, in the plan, have taken a little bit, I don't know if softer is the right word, but not quite, I'm not saying you have to do this, but still trying to keep that spirit of working with those communities, and having them take ownership of the programs, and just as Colerain and Springfield did. So we do identify that in the plan. Another note, I did meet, and so we had, I think it was at the May meeting, we had Rumpke, I think, gave public comment saying that they were, supportive, but want to know how it would be enforced.
Exactly.
And so I did reach out to our other big residential haulers, Bestway and Republic. I heard back from Republic, and we had a good meeting. They're also, similar to what Rumpke said, they are supportive of doing something where there would be automatic recycling. They would like to see it it would basically be more helpful for them to have it, mandated, so to speak. The last thing I'll say is that I did reach out to the prosecutor's office to get an opinion. We have not received back, but whether this body, the policy committee, or the Board of County Commissioners has the authority to do this, because I reached out to, during a SWATO, which is the Organization of Solid Waste Districts of Ohio, and asked other districts who else has this, and no other district has it. So there's no precedent for it. So I did reach out and see if this committee or the Board of County Commissioners even has the authority to do it. I think that would be a good question to answer.
Well, yes, it would.
Yeah.
Well,
And I would want to clarify that I would want an opinion for the policy committee, and not just an opinion to the administration that the policy committee might not get.
Well, it was a request from our office, so, yes.
So the policy committee would need to ask for one separately?
No, I could provide it.
Okay.
Yeah. It wouldn't be like county administration.
Okay.
I would say and I appreciate all that feedback, I do. I would say that in developing a solid waste plan, in just an overall response, a plan sets forth policies and direction, and for 5 years, and then the implementation over those 5 years is developed during that 5 years, and then you implement those policies. So this is fitting for that development of that plan. It's not out of line with the concept of putting it into the plan in its current form. It's consistent with, these policies are consistent with placement into a 5-year plan as you develop the infrastructure, as you develop the policies, as you develop the rules behind these rules. That's very consistent, and that's how the 5-year plan is intended to work. There are still some mysteries here. I recognize that. We can try to answer some of those mysteries to your pleasure, but and comfort. There should be a comfort level in adopting the rules. I recognize that, but any rules such as this are normally adopted, and then the infrastructure is developed over time, and any timeline placed in these rules are rolling timelines depending upon infrastructure development. And I think that should be an understanding. So if there is a timeline that you're uncomfortable with, that can be adjusted.
I'm sorry, I didn't answer that last question about the organics infrastructure.
Well, can we go back to the legal opinion? So, if this is a conversation that we're having hypothetically, and we're not sure if we're allowed to do something like this, we might want to resolve that first.
I would agree.
Yeah, so that I would hate to spin our wheels entirely at this meeting, talking about something that we don't have the authority to do, nor does the Board of County Commissioners have the authority to do. So, when did you ask for the opinion?
Oh, Teresa.
Oh, my God. Good. Good. Okay, so can we, and Nifong is here, we're gonna, ask for a status or an update on that and try to get that moving so that we can have a relevant discussion.
The opinion was assigned to someone else in the office, Dave Stevenson. I believe he's getting ready to render it.
Okay.
Momentarily.
All right, well then, if you don't mind, if we don't have the authority to do what's being recommended here, would you mind moving to the second item? And I don't mean to, and if people want to, talk about this, that's fine, but I would really hate for us to spin our wheels if we don't have the authority to do what's being recommended.
I just want to get clarity that Dave Stevenson then would have client-attorney privilege with this policy committee?
Yes, this is client privilege with the Bell and Brad and the county administration.
Okay, so can we get an opinion for the policy committee?
Michelle's saying she'll share the opinion with the policy committee
But
as the client.
Well, I think we need a different one.
Well, Nifong, tell us mechanically how that works. If Michelle is asked for the opinion.
There's one opinion.
So, and it's protected by attorney-client privilege.
Yes, and
How
whoever receives it can waive that privilege
Okay.
and submit it and hand it out.
Okay, so you have said, so we just need to clear this up. So you said you would waive attorney-client privilege then and share it with the policy committee?
I requested it really on behalf of the committee,
Right.
so you would know the answer. So it wouldn't do much good for me to just know the answer.
Right, okay. Are you comfortable with that she would share the opinion and waive the privilege?
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
So would we have this opinion at the next policy committee meeting?
Sounds like it. I would expect,
Sounds like it, but I'm not gonna make that commitment. I'm not drafting it, so.
sounds like it though. We will, let's put it on like a particular almost to check in, so that we make sure that we'll have it.
Okay.
Next meeting.
Okay.
Thank you.
And what exactly is the opinion asking for?
I asked, in particular, I actually copied and pasted Bob's, language from the May meeting, because that's what I had at that time. But it was basically asking, does, the policy committee or the Board of County Commissioners have the authority to pass these kinds of rules? So have the legal authority, I'm sorry, I can't recall exactly.
Or is there any laws preventing us from doing that?
Yeah, I didn't ask that in particular. I specifically wanted to know if the policy committee had that authority, or if the Board of County Commissioners has it.
For what it's worth, I have looked through the Ohio Revised Code, Solid Waste Management Code, and there isn't anything that says we cannot, but I'm not the attorney. I recognize that.
Okay.
So, I wonder if there's a distinction between passing the rule and then passing an enforcement mechanism.
That's a good question.
So I don't know if we need to follow that up, because we might be allowed to pass any rule we want, but we can't put a penalty on it.
And we enforce it.
Yeah.
Well, and it's also worth pointing out, you're looking to contract with the sheriff's office, will they entertain a contract? And also, if the sheriff issues an enforcement order, will the prosecutor act upon that enforcement order? So those are all high-level questions, all three pieces have to work before it can have.
Currently, the sheriff's office enforces ORC code, not a policy committee rule. I think that is a nuance that we need to be explored.
Tying it back to the days of Smoke-Free Ohio, my office worked to try and maybe potentially have a different office, like the sheriff's office, go around to the bars at 11 o'clock at night as opposed to and that was not entertained.
Did not work out. Did not work out.
Now, in occasions, we would invite them with us at no cost to provide protection to my food inspector, but,
So it may need to be enforced by the health department or somebody else.
My concept
With-
was
with
to add,
fines.
my concept was to add it to Brian's contract.
Yeah.
employees we were gonna involve.
That's right. That's right.
Door to door.
But there is a recognition that.
Okay, so maybe, so if we need to add that to the request of the prosecutor's office, I think we need to do that now.
Yeah.
So that we're
Yes.
not, in the next meeting saying, oh, wait a minute, okay, so, what do we need to add to a request of the prosecutor to get back to us?
So I'm not sure if it's the prosecutor, and if you correct me, I mean, it might be a conversation with the sheriff, if we have the legal authority, is the sheriff willing to consider a contract with the solid waste district as an enforcement mechanism? And then the second question actually would go to the prosecutor's office. If the sheriff issued a citation against a resident or a business, would the prosecutor's office be willing to take that individual who fails to comply to court?
Oh, and that's interesting, because remember, the prosecutor said they would not, enforce the rules that we passed. So,
I don't know what you're talking about, but what we're saying here is that
the
we need to wait for the opinion to come out, see if it's yes or no. And if it's yes, then like anything else, any legislation we did, as I helped public health put together the Smoke-Free Ohio rules and everything else, from hearings to enforcement, and we can go from there. Because right now, we're just guessing.
Well, let's say this, let's say that I'm worried about the time lag, so if we get an opinion before our next meeting, why don't we authorize Michelle then to follow up, on behalf of the board, or you could do it on your own, and then ask these follow-up questions. Let's do that, so that we get the one opinion and they roll one from the next, so.
So let me see if I understand it. So you're wanting another opinion to see whether or not you can contract with the
We're gonna wait for the first opinion to come.
right?
If the opinion is yes, you have some authority, then we move through the next opinions to see if we're still in good stead. If the answer is no, you have no authority, nor does the Board of Commission, then there's no need for, an additional opinion from
Right,
the
but if,
prosecutors.
let's say that you're in good stead,
Yep,
then the policy, Michelle or Brad would reach out to
yeah.
Sheriff McGuffey, right? Who would say, yes, we'll be more than happy to take more of your dollars, and let Brian do all of the cases. And then from there, the enforcement would come to us, and I'm sure Joe Diers will say, we'll be more than happy to enforce it. So I don't see that we need another opinion,
Let me,
if it is a yes.
let me throw
Well,
out,
I think there was there's some history here with evidently the tobacco piece, and so I think that's why we.
That was a different sheriff.
Okay, but I think we just would like to know,
That's fine.
and get that opinion, because in the past, that has not been the case.
But I guess what I'm getting confused is when you're saying opinion, that would be staff just reaching out.
That's right. Staff reaches out, and then were we to need an additional opinion, we would not have the time delay. We would not have to have another board meeting in order to ask for yet another opinion. Michelle has the authority to do that on our behalf, or rather your behalf, whichever, to continue to keep the ball rolling before we have another meeting. That's all I'm getting at. Can we have, agreement on that course of action?
Yeah, and I just
Okay.
wanted to clarify that if the sheriff was a bad idea, that I would like to know what the other options for enforcement are.
the thought pattern that I have is, on the universal trash, is it's an anti-littering or, additional tool. So how are we enforcing the anti-littering and anti-dumping ordinance? Obviously, if you spot somebody dumping, that's one issue. That's different than this. But this is a tool to prevent that illegal dumping. So it's a little different than enforcing the anti-dumping law, but
Right.
it follows that same
Right,
issue
and-
in code.
Right, and I don't think we should presume we know
Right.
what the sheriff is gonna say.
Right.
So let's
Exactly.
let it roll, let's let this roll through, and then we'll get to it when we get to it.
Got it.
You know, as we get the opinion from the prosecutor.
One additional question, if I may. Michelle, if it comes back that we can adopt a policy, I'd be curious if other communities have experienced what Sue has shared, that the city of Cincinnati, which does have universal trash collection, has seen an increase in open dumping. So we're talking about a policy for Hamilton County. Are we inviting Butler County, Indiana, Northern Kentucky, Warren County, and Claremont County to come on over and bring their trash? Worth exploring. Just if others have experienced.
I think that is a very valid point, that right now, 80% of the open dumping litter complaints that environmental enforcement receives comes from the city of Cincinnati, who has universal trash collection. So again, I think
You wanna
there
speak to
needs to
that?
be more analysis
Because you have
before we
leakage.
draw conclusions.
Well, let me just say, so we're bleeding into policy a little bit, as opposed to just, I would just as soon get the opinion, so that we, start there, and then if we get an opinion that we do have the authority, then these kinds of things need to be taken into consideration as we talk to them.
Yeah, 'cause I wouldn't agree with her in that, 'cause we do have a lot of leakage, and because we have universal just for 1 to 4 family at this point, the 1 to 5s and the businesses do not necessarily. And so we do see, but you're right, we do have a lot of dumping. I'm curious though that, a good portion of it though is construction debris from what I've been hearing, which probably we wouldn't even, this won't even help, so I'm like, well, how do we close the hole for this?
This ordinance would
C&D that gets dumped,
would
how do we?
affect Cincinnati's multifamily.
Yeah.
This ordinance would be very
We have law enforcement raising his hand.
So I would just like to comment that, yes, 80% of my work is fortunately, unfortunately, in the city, and ironically, I cite under their municipal code because it has more than just a littering, but obviously, if it's under the Ohio Revised Code, and it falls under the theft of trash service, that is countywide. But what I do in the city, I use their open dumping policy, their municipal code, because it's an M1 versus an M4 for littering. So countywide, if it's in the county, I do the theft of trash services or littering, versus if it's in the city, I physically cite under their municipal code. And FYI.
Thank you. All right, so we're gonna get the legal opinion.
Yep.
We'll be informed as to when that, and what that opinion is. Okay, so, let's move on to
The fee structure.
the fee structure, yes.
If we don't mind,
Karen, come up and introduce yourself, because we don't allow shouting out in the room.
I have major dental work the other day, and I'm kind of woozy, so if I go down,
Oh, well, then maybe.
haven't been to happy hour. Okay. So my name is Karen Lucan, and one thing I want to make totally clear, I have never done work for Rumpke. I am not doing work for Rumpke. What I do is I do work for countries all over the world, designing recycling programs, designing composting programs. Ruth brought up the World Bank. I do work for the World Bank as well. So again, I design recycling programs, composting programs all over the world, all over the country. One of the things that is brought up many times by the audience, and I want to respect their concern, was the planning process that was used. So for those of you who are not familiar with the Ohio EPA format, Appendix H is where all the analysis occurs. And I think we analyzed, 13 different programs. We looked at how many tons these programs could divert. We looked at potential greenhouse gas emissions. We looked at implementation requirements. We looked at education and outreach requirements. That took us about 8 months. So we then took all of that information, we prioritized the programs, and then in Appendix I is where these programs would be implemented. Timelines, implementation requirements. Again, so H and I is where the meat of this plan occurs. I am happy to say that Ohio EPA says that Ohio EPA's comments commends the district for its efforts to thoroughly evaluate its programming through the analysis in Appendix H. This is how the Ohio EPA format intended the plan to function. Ohio EPA appreciates how much time and effort the district put into these analyses and hopes the district saw value in conducting them. There was quite a bit of comment about organics and food waste. Again, the plan has extensive conversation
about developing a public-private partnership for a centralized composting facility. The plan also talks about helping community gardens and community composting thrive and foster over the next 5 years. In Ohio EPA's response to that, the district's analysis related to the vegetative and non-vegetative food waste is exceptional. This important waste stream certainly warrants this level of inclusion in the plan. Finally, as Michelle alluded to, the district has been working with townships to get them from an open collection where you have the choice to subscribe to a contract collection. Again, the plan talks extensively about how continuing that effort. I think the biggest difference that I'm hearing from the comments today and the plan's approach is not taking a mandate required approach with the townships and collection. I've also had the opportunity to help communities throughout the country convert from an open to a contract system. And even though it will save residents money and improve the environment, government coming in and telling them you no longer have a choice of who you haul with or collect with can pivot the entire focus of the next 5 years and all of the positives on government is taking away my freedom of choice. Logically to me, it makes no sense, but that is something you have to fight. You have to tread carefully, nuanced, and get support versus the government coming in and say, you shall do this. So again, I just wanted to bring an overview of the planning process. It has been very thorough. We had over 800 residents respond to a public survey. We met with all of the communities. As Michelle said, there will be a public hearing. So I'm thrilled that all of you are here, but again, I think there is this perception that this plan was done in a vacuum, that there's no emphasis on organic or improving waste collection, decreasing open dumping and littering. All of those are priorities of this plan. So again, I just kind of wanted to share a little bit because what I was hearing today definitely did not reflect the work of Michelle's team and the inclusion of the public throughout this process. So, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. And I appreciate that recognition that the issues that are being raised are issues that have been raised before and are, incorporated in the plan. It's the approach, I think, that's different here. Okay, so let's go on to the fee structure.
Okay, I'll try to be quick. Time's evaporating here. The fee structure proposal is to increase the Tier 2 out-of-district but in-state fee structure from $2 to $4. And there's a couple of ways to approach this. The Ohio Revised Code I have in the attachment that you have before you. It's in full. It's printed in full. I won't read it in full, but Ohio Revised Code permits us to raise the fee structure to the maximum of $4 per ton. So I'm proposing to raise the Tier 2 fees to the maximum of $4 per ton.
Excuse me, Bob, what's the citation on the ORC?
Ohio Revised Code.
I don't have a copy of it.
What's that again?
I don't have a copy of it.
I
don't need a copy of it.
one you sent.
Oh,
Give me the citation, that's all I need.
it's Ohio Revised Code 3734.57B.
Thank you.
Did it not go out in the packet?
It wasn't in this original.
Oh, okay.
Yes, right here.
I got it,
Right
it's in the red.
Yeah, you got it, sorry.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
It's in the red in the packet. Yeah. Yeah, okay. So, anyway, the Ohio Revised Code allows for us to raise the Tier 2 fee up to $4 per ton. The purpose, I have two purposes for raising this fee structure. One is based on current disposal rates. More than 52% of waste disposed in the district is from Tier 2, and we went through that disposal record this meeting as well as every meeting. And as the district engages in waste reduction and diversion activities to reduce reliance on landfilling, the capacity of the local landfill is greatly reduced due to out-of-district waste flows in the county. And the current capacity of the Rumpke landfill is 23 years. If the capacity is gauged based on current flows of waste, if the flows of waste increase to any great degree, then that capacity will dramatically decrease, not based on current years, but more so. So it might be 21 years or 20 years next year if we have increased flows of waste. To protect landfill capacity for Hamilton County residents, this extra fee on waste generated in this state, but out of district, Tier 2, is intended to create an incentive to reduce waste flows from out of the district. No attempt is being made to raise the fee on waste generated within this district. Notably, this fee revision will be part of the plan update, which will be ultimately needed to be approved by the Hamilton County municipalities and townships. It goes through the ratification process. The purpose number 2, the extra revenue from this fee per ton increase, ultimately an increase of $2 per ton on waste generated in state but out of district, is estimated to raise $2.48 million annually. That's multiplying $2 times the increased number of tons that are estimated to come in based upon the monthly reports that we get from Rumpke. These funds are to be dedicated, and my thoughts are to the expansion of infrastructure expenses of the countywide organics processing program. You just heard about the organics processing plan that is in the plan. We need funding for that infrastructure development. Expansion of the HHW program, private-public partnership, that we've discussed in the last few meetings. Expansion of commercial and industrial waste audit program, and expansion of institutional and school recycling program. That list can change at your will, but it's the decision of the policy committee what is funded. And we have annual discussions on the annual budget of the district. So the question often is, what if this is effective? What if there is a decrease in flows of waste? We'll cut into the budget. If there is a 12% out-of-district waste moves away from the Hamilton County district, I would cheer that. But how would that affect the budget? $150,000, 150,000 annual tons less disposed of in the Hamilton County. It will help preserve the lifespan of the landfill. And it would be greater revenues for the district by 76%. I did the calculations. Because it's a fee increase. It's a $2 per ton increase. If we had 25% of the out-of-district waste that moves away from Hamilton County, we would have 312,500 annual tons less waste disposed in Hamilton County, increasing the lifespan of the landfill, and we would have greater revenues of 50% of the out-of-district revenues. 50% out-of-district waste moves out. 50%. Then we have 625,000 annual tons less disposed of in the Hamilton County landfill, and it would be no loss revenues. It's a neutral on the revenues. Simply put, you double the revenues, and you take 50% of that waste flow out. That's a neutral on the revenue flow. Same revenue as previous years. So I don't believe that Brown County and Clermont County haulers will move their waste to a landfill that's dramatically miles away, simply because of staff time and diesel fuel at over $5 a gallon, and the amount of wear and tear and O&M on their vehicles. It's really unbelievable that you're going to turn away these haulers well beyond the 50% mark. So I didn't calculate beyond the 50%. So I think those scenarios are very realistic. I think that it will not cut into the district revenues at that proposal level. And I think that it is accurate statistics, and I do believe it fits with the district mission statement of reducing our reliance on landfills. And if there is another proposal that's better than mine for reducing reliance on our landfills, I'd entertain that proposal. But that's my concept on reducing reliance on landfills, and that is part of the mission of this policy committee. So I leave it for discussion. I lay it out on the table for discussion.
Yeah, the City of Cincinnati administration, we supports the fee increase. And several council members who we've spoke to. I haven't gotten all of them, but I know we've got a few already on board. And that increasing the cost of landfilling is even in our Green Cincinnati plan, because we recognize in a capitalistic society that our behavior is changed by the amount that they pay for something. And so by right now, we have the lowest landfill costs that there are, really around the United States. And so because it is so low, we've not developed our infrastructure for composting and other types of recycling because it doesn't make economic sense like it does in other parts of the country. And so we have to increase the cost of landfilling to develop alternative types of waste diversion programs. Because we're, more than half is from out of district. We're kind of like the dumping ground of Southwest Ohio, and so the residents of Hamilton County are disproportionately impacted by the trucks and the traffic and the noise and the odors and the landslides and the subterranean fires, and and they're the ones who have to smell it, and our Hamilton County residents are the ones who are having the asthma problems and the respiratory problems because of out of district waste. And also because it's the largest emitter of landfill, of all landfills in the United States, it emits more methane. So we have to get a grip on our organics. And the fee increase is the way to pay for this infrastructure. I don't see how we could possibly do universal without this fee increase.
I see them tied together.
They're totally tied together. If they're not tied, because it's going to drain the budget. Like, you can't do universal without the fee increase. I believe it just makes it all work together. And that, and our primary goal is preserve actual landfill space, not to preserve waste prevention awareness programs.
So thoughts from the other policy committee members?
If I may. So I guess, first and foremost, our plan has to be ratified by the communities. And so I hear Sue saying she feels somewhat confident the City of Cincinnati, which is one of the required communities, has to approve the plan. But we have 48 other political jurisdictions in Hamilton County. I would wonder if we've done any work with the entirety of the 48 to know if we would get more than 24 to say yes, they would support an increase. I think that's first and foremost, because if they won't, then we're putting a lot of effort into a plan that won't get ratified by the communities, and then we go down the pathway which Michelle shared of OEPA coming in and determining our plan. So I think that's important. The other thing I think that is important, anytime I take to my Board of Health a fee increase, they never love when I jump a $10 fee by $5, which isn't that much, right? $5 isn't that much in the grand scheme of things, but to the operator that's paying 10 and you're at doubling or, adding that much more, it's a big deal. So I would challenge that a $2 jump, even though you're proposing, I think, 2024, is a huge one-time increase, and would be, if this committee at some point entertains it, I would be more palatable to 50 cents over a certain number of years, or some structure to allow the small businesses to accommodate that. And then lastly, we have an amazing team of professionals here, starting with the director of the program and her staff underneath, including consultants that have helped draft the plan. I would really like time for them to analyze and provide feedback to this team, which then can set the policy after the administrative staff have shared their opinions.
And yeah, so you're right. I really question. I don't think the city will approve it without these in there.
So, as your consultant, I agree completely with you. Bob, your modeling is wonderful, but we need to look at other districts that are sitting on a border of another state to see if they raise their fees, what happens to waste flow. Because what was not mentioned is this, in a worst-case scenario, the out-of-district Ohio waste goes to Kentucky or Indiana, and the Kentucky or Indiana waste comes over to Rumpke. Not save any landfill space, and now instead of $2 a ton, we can only get $1 a ton for out-of-state waste. that was ruled by the United States Supreme Court. So again, I think we need to do sensitivity analysis on how these waste flows could occur before we start talking about raising fees. I think in fairness to our other Southwest Ohio neighbors, I mean, a $2 per ton increase, we're already getting, what, $2 million from them? And now the district is sitting on $5 million in the bank, and now you're gonna say we want another $2 million? We have no idea what the economy is going to even be like in 2024. So all these things, I mean, this is, you know, I understand the cities would be really happy to get more money. Who wouldn't be? But I think we have to do an analysis before any decision is made. Everything that's planned so far, as I mentioned in Appendix 8, has been data-driven, analytical, carefully thought out. So, like I said, I think before looking at financial changes, you need to plan for the worst and hope for the best.
Yeah. And the city is more interested in a staggered increase, not doing it all at once.
Yeah.
So that it do it in smaller increments so that it can be evaluated.
I tend to favor the 50 cents over 4 years myself.
I think it's important to take back to city administration, though. If the city says this is how it's going to be, we have 48 other communities, and if agreement can't be reached between the communities and the OEPA fix, and I guarantee OEPA is going to land fairly closely to the plan that was submitted. So I think we should use this as a policy opportunity and a collaborative opportunity and work towards something that's palatable to all of the communities that we serve.
Yeah.
One thing to remember on the ratification is it's percentage of population. It's not count of communities, it's percentage. And so as we count the votes, we gotta look at it that perspective. But I do recognize, and for sake of the clock itself, I wanna wrap this discussion up. I recognize there isn't votes to support this concept at this moment in time. I would like your consideration on this topic at a future meeting. I would like you to kind of work this through your minds and to work through some of the conflicts on this issue. So I would like a motion that's separate and distinctly different than what was originally proposed in the packet. And hear me out and see if this satisfies your interest, okay? I move that the Hamilton County Solid Waste Management District Policy Committee request district staff to contract for a financial analysis and programmatic analysis on what would happen if Tier 2 fees were changed under the following scenarios. Tier 2 fee raised $2 effective January 1st, 2024. That's one scenario. The second scenario, Tier 2 fees raised $1 effective January 1st, 2024, and $1 effective January 1st, 2025. And the third scenario, Tier 2 fee raised 50 cents effective January 1st, 2024, and each of the following 3 years for a total of $2. Furthermore, the report due back to the policy committee at its January 2023 meeting for discussion, so that it comes back to us for a discussion, and we can, and the reason why I picked that date.
What was the date?
That January 2023 meeting for discussion. And the reason why I picked that date is that it fits in with our timeline. We have January public comment and a public hearing in mid-February in our timeline. And I kind of feel like it kind of fits into that flow.
So I'd like to hear from staff about the timeframe.
I'm happy you didn't say November.
No, I didn't say November.
I would definitely, I'm glad that you included contracting, because I would definitely lean on Karen to hopefully help.
Yes.
And that would really just be dependent on how much time she has. We have a little bit left in our contract. We'd likely need to amend it to add more funds, because I don't think there's enough hours left.
Well, I mean, we did reserve some hours in case the comments from Ohio EPA were not positive.
Right.
So we would have to look at that.
And I don't understand what study you're talking about, Bob. I understand the financial part, which you've kind of done here already. But I don't understand what the scope of the programmatic, you use that word, and it's so broad and general, I have no idea what you're referring to.
Yeah, Karen, do you understand what I mean by that?
In a way, to be honest with you, I would approach it differently. I would figure out what money do you need
landfill and the impact of that landfill, I think the expenditures should be prioritized, that's where the money should go, not just put in the district's general fund of, okay, now I've got all this money, let's go spend it. I mean, I just don't think that's good public policy.
I hear what you're saying, but one of the purposes is to discourage, flows of waste.
But we have this conversation for total transparency, both you and I know that $2 a ton is not going to make a truck from Butler County go somewhere else.
I
So,
absolutely
I
agree.
mean, either the
I
goal
absolutely
is
agree.
changing the flow of waste or generating revenue, and again, I think the revenue should be based on need, not just, well, let's go get as much money as we can get.
Karen, I heard the public comment today, it seemed very much focused on diverting or saving our landfill space. What you're saying is, it probably won't have a big impact, it'll only have.
Well, I mean, if it contributes to the composting facility, yes, that could be a big impact. But it's not gonna shift waste from one county, most likely to another. But that's why I would like to look at counties on state borders to see how that played out.
The maximum amount that state code allows is $2.
Yeah.
That's the maximum we're allowed to.
So, you know, we are a policy committee, and I know, Bob, you've worked in this realm, so you have an advantage that all of us don't have quite the same. But I like the idea of asking staff to do some research and use a contractor.
Yeah.
But your motion was very inflexible and very specifics, and we have hired somebody who's done work around the world. Why not allow for a motion that directs her to come up with some ideas that might help meet the goal of reducing landfill impact from out of territory or out of county waste, as well as what we could do with new generation of.
I'm open to that concept.
Bob, you presented one scenario where you said, oh, well, you know, the extra cost for fuel, the extra cost for time, the extra cost for maintenance, we're not gonna see a reduction,
That's accurate.
in the added. Unless you got some data to show that, I can't just blindly accept that when we're talking about millions of dollars in revenues or millions of dollars we're gonna spend on things. That's a pretty broad, general statement. I wouldn't make that statement. I don't feel comfortable making that statement, not knowing what those. It requires a broader look. That was the point I'm trying to make. It requires a broader look. You've got a lot of landfills around the area. I mean, it's amazing. I'm amazed sometimes at how far some waste is transported, and there are other things that go on, as Karen Lucan said, where could wind up with the waste going out of state, not Hamilton, but the waste that would go, the out of district, in-state waste going out of state, but the out of state waste actually increasing, which kind of offsets one of the goals here.
No, I don't understand why you think out of state is gonna increase if we cost more.
It won't cost more for out of state.
Well, no, you're right.
Have to be the same.
Exactly, yeah, we're not increasing that, but why with no change, why do you think it's going to change the waste flows without changing it?
It would change the waste flows because of the economics of different landfills and economics of different waste companies and their business strategies.
So if we don't change it, they're gonna it doesn't make any sense.
Can I suggest, though, I mean, I think, I hear Tony saying he wants more data, and we're talking, it seems like relatively in agreement that maybe a consultant or the district in conjunction with the consultant would be best to provide some additional analysis with the ideas that Bob has presented.
Yeah.
So in that regard.
Let me shorten my motion.
Let's redo the motion. Yep.
Yeah.
Redo the motion.
With the thought that Greg's presenting, let me redo the motion. Yeah. I move that the Hamilton County Solid Waste Management District Policy Committee request district staff to contract for financial analysis and a programmatic analysis on what would happen if Tier 2 fees were changed for the purpose of discouraging.
Well, why wouldn't
landfill space?
Why wouldn't you say period?
Period.
In addition to that, we would like ideas as to how to divert waste and look at compost. I mean,
Bingo,
yes.
yeah. And furthermore, the report is due back to the policy committee at its January 23 meeting for discussion.
But for that motion, when you talk about programmatic analysis, do you mean qualitative? Or the quantitative with the data, but qualitative as to where the trapdoors are Okay.
Yeah, and we're really responding to Karen's thoughts in the minutes last time about, we need to see what's gonna happen. But
We
the way we look
absolutely,
at it,
we had a financial analysis of
yes.
the district too, and I'm very concerned about the financial analysis and,
Yeah.
and because there could be a tremendous impact here, and we need to understand that. So
Yeah.
I'm as,
Right.
as concerned about the finances, and, yes, are you agreeing, because you're
Well,
the
I just
finance
want to also
guy?
piggyback off what you're gonna say, but I think,
Yeah.
you know, Bob brought up some points of if haulers do go somewhere else, if it only goes 25% down or 50% down, but then we have Karen saying out of state might do it. All these scenarios, you're gonna have to probably create different tiers in the plan saying, okay, if we increase by this amount, what do we plan on doing with the money? If we decrease by this amount, what do we plan on doing with the money? If we decrease, if we're staying even, what are we doing with the money? So you can't just assume that Bob's gonna be right, you gotta have a plan for it.
I agree.
It's gonna have all,
Yeah.
it's gonna have all this,
You're gonna have to have
just
about
like
10
we did,
scenarios.
the last thing, where you're gonna have to have all these scenarios.
Well, and this is the
For
challenge of
negative
the timing
situation.
here,
Right, 'cause
right?
we're talking about a public meeting in February.
Yeah.
I mean, so I'm.
So I feel that we need to move forward with the motion. I mean, I think this is, we need to do the analysis, right? So we know what we're talking about. So I think that's a good idea. So let's go there first. All
I'll
right.
second the motion.
Thank you.
and we'll have our legal opinion back.
I don't have a problem with the, doing the study. I do have, very much of a concern with trying to squeeze it down to, October, November, December seems like a long time.
Yeah, I am,
But for a study like this,
because a lot of it's going to be dependent on me getting information from other solid waste districts, which they're good about. So I would feel comfortable saying with the goal of the January 23rd policy committee meeting, but I always want to be very honest with my clients that if I don't think I can make that goal, you know, I'll know within a month if people are giving me data and being responsive, so that I would feel professionally better about the goal.
I understand that.
So I have one other question. If I heard what you said, that the fees are linked to the other proposal you made. So if that proposal drops by the wayside, then
This is
the
still,
whole basis for the fee increase and what you're gonna do with the revenues drops
No.
out.
no,
No,
this,
there's two votes.
everything to be funded through this is still in the plan.
Well, so can I just intervene here and say that I hear what you're saying related to that first motion, but I think the first motion is intended to increase recycling and composting.
That's right.
So, and mandate, if we're unable to do it, that's not the only way to skin a cat,
That's
right? So there are other ways to encourage people to do this behavior that I think we all agree we want.
Yep.
So the analysis is important to get us to a space where we know how much money we're looking at perhaps, and then become strategies as to how we get there.
That's right.
So I think they're linked, but they're not linked. They're not, they don't have to be linked.
It was.
I like the way you put it.
Yeah, it was kind of like with the universal waste, it's gonna take another administrator and a lot of enforcement. So it's gonna take money that we don't have currently. And also for the ability to restore the household hazardous waste program, to be an effective program, it's gonna take $400,000 on an annual basis. And so that's why the extra income is gonna help us take care of it.
Understood. Okay, so we've got a time frame in here. I wanna make sure we're all comfortable with this time frame. We just had our consultant say she may or may not be able to meet that time frame. And I worry a little bit about the interaction with the plan. I think this is important for us to do, whether it's incorporated in the plan or not. I worry about the time frame. I'll just be honest with you. A lot of work has gone into this. We've had public discussions about it. We have 800 people, so we have a plan, and we've already sent it up to EPA. There's room for some movement, but I don't think dramatic movement, or I think we get ourselves in some trouble here. That said, I think this is imperative that we get this information. So I just want to lay that on the table by way of expectations. And I'm speaking for myself and no one else. So the time frame here, Karen, are you, if it's
tight, because, I think the other part of this is that if we raise the fees to other districts, that we're not impacting their waste reduction programs or HHW programs. Because their waste all comes through Rumpke. So again, we don't want to create more problems by changing. So, like I said, January is tight. It won't be my prettiest report. but we'll have the data, how about that?
We have a January and we have a March policy
Let's do
committee
March.
meeting. We could.
Are you okay with March?
We could kick it back to the March policy committee meeting.
All right, what's your
You're
motion,
concerned about the
Ray?
public meeting, right?
Oh,
Yeah.
you made it.
But
Okay, you made the motion.
Yeah.
I made the motion, I could defer to the March 2023
All right, so
meeting.
you're amending your motion to make it the March,
March.
policy committee meeting date. Matt, are you
I'll
okay with the
second the
amendment?
amended
All right, very good. Do we have any further discussion?
One
My
more.
only
Go ahead.
is Bob, can we extend his term, isn't he, are you over in November?
I'm uncertain about my term,
January,
January.
January,
this
so
would be your last meeting.
can we just extend his term until this is resolved?
Well, that's not up to us. That's up to the appointing authority.
You mean the appointing authority?
Who appoints you?
The
Four of us,
Oh, we do. All right.
Yeah.
Never mind.
are you three amenable to that, him staying around till we get this?
It's his plan.
I mean, I would have to know, are we allowed to do
Yeah,
more
well,
extension?
I'm fine with that too, except what we
It's
need.
just like Tony,
Well, I don't know what we need to do to make that so.
okay.
So, let's look into that. I mean,
You can't
but
stay Tony here.
we're
Maybe put that
amenable
on
to
the
it.
agenda for next
Right.
meeting.
Yeah, so
Right.
I enjoy the differing opinions, so, I mean, conceptually, as long as we're allowed, I have,
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
good,
I
okay,
enjoy
perfect.
that
That's right. So,
Good.
okay, well, we'll get an opinion on how we make that happen. Yeah.
I just wanna ask Michelle, do you have enough money, or as part of this motion or a separate motion, do you need us to have an additional appropriation so you
No,
can do what
I
you need
think
to
we
do?
have enough funds.
Okay. Karen, you don't get to comment on that part. No comment from you. Okay, we've got a motion, we've got a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Thank you. All right, Bob.
Sorry it took so
Okay,
much.
all right, Bob. All right. Let's check my calendar. Okay, let's move on to our next item, 2023 waste characterization study. And Michelle, I'm gonna ask you to truncate if you can, in a matter of time.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So, I will make this 30 seconds. So, it has been 5 years since our last, residential waste sort. The last time we did it was 2018, so we would be on schedule if we do it every 5 years to do it in 2023. I put this on the agenda. I know we've had other discussions of how to spend carryover, but this is particularly timely if we are able to add $150,000 into our budget. The budget office downtown can do it more smoothly than if we add it in the future. So that is why I put it here. I believe that it would be really helpful to support the work that we're doing to try to see, particularly food waste, where we're at, if we've reduced it, if it's increasing, to identify possible new waste streams. There's also a lot of opportunities coming our way to work with Ohio State University on food waste, and recycling partnership on curbside. So it's good timing also to do some of these waste audits. We would like to look at innovative ways and not just do it the same old, where you go to the landfill and separate it out. So we're also looking at what are some new, especially in the commercial sector, what are some ways we could identify waste streams by the sector versus just this is how much is in commercial waste, because they're also different. So my request is that staff recommendation is to set aside $150,000 for the 2023 budget for waste characterization studies.
I fully support it, and I recommend side by side with a waste characterization study, a recycling characterization study of the material going to the MRF. It's extremely important to know what in particular is going to the MRF, particularly the contamination items.
Yeah, a study of the residual.
The residuals, the study of the residuals.
So I will say we have done that earlier, that in 2019, we worked with the city of Cincinnati, and we actually worked with, I think it was 12 other communities and did a study like that in 2019. So that was a little bit
I wasn't aware of
earlier
that, that's good.
data, yeah.
So if you want that done, they're gonna need more money to do that,
For the add-on.
for the recycling.
Is the 2019 residual study adequate enough, or do you need a more current one?
I mean, I would say it doesn't include the new materials, the cups, and the
I'd say 2023 is 4 years later. I would recommend another one.
What would be an additional cost estimate for that?
probably another $50,000. They're very expensive to do
Yeah, they are.
characterization studies.
They are.
Well, generally, I'm a fiscal conservative. However, we are sitting on a nice reserve. So I am gonna suggest that we alter the amount to 200,000 to incorporate, what Bob has suggested.
Could I make a suggestion, and you set it at a maximum no more than 75,000? Because, unless you got a sense about the 50,000 already that you think
Well,
from past.
so you wanna say no more than a total amount here? 225, yeah.
No more than 225.
Not to exceed 225.
So it was 150, right? You're suggesting 75?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so you obviously need a motion here, so I'll make the motion that staff conducts the, waste characterization study and incorporates the recycling into that study, at a cost not to exceed $225,000. Okay, right. Do I have a second? Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Next item.
Then all of the next 4 items are informational items, and we can just take those as written in the manager's, memo. But I will say that we do have a upcoming Household Hazardous Products collection event, and this is a 2-day event. We expanded it to try to accommodate more residents, and those residents who work on the weekend, we can't do it during the week. So it is Friday, October 21st, and Saturday, October 22nd. We open the registration at 2:00 on Monday, and we already have over 1,000 registrations. So if you are interested in registering it, I would suggest you do it. I don't need to comment unless there are questions on the other one.
Okay, are there questions related to any of the informational items on our agenda?
I just have one question on, environmental enforcement, whether anything out of the ordinary, deputy, or is it pretty much in steady state?
Just the volume is up, and I think we discussed last time that because, through KTB, they have hired an individual to service and hone in on the cameras and the, batteries and the manner in which they process them, so, yeah, I'm getting inundated with, the KTB stuff.
I would add, I love your work.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. All right, any other questions? Very good. The next item is, the next date, which is Wednesday, November 16th.
Well, actually, conflict of interest, if we could talk about that.
Oh, sorry. Okay, yes, the opinion for the conflict of interest.
Right. So anyway, at the last meeting on the 17th, I wasn't there, but I watched the video. And, the issue that I have is, we were first told that the commissioners were obligated to ratify the appointment, and then they didn't ratify it.
So that was a misunderstanding by our administration, because it had never been done before, and so it went to the Board of County Commissioners, but should not have. This is the board that has the authority. The Board of County Commissioners do not.
For the appointment of the 3 members, right? Okay.
Yes.
And then, so for the, okay. So with that, okay, one more. My second issue, is, that when the county commissioners did express that there was a conflict of interest, at the May meeting, Mifong indicated that the conflict of interest was removed by Tony not participating in any discussions or votes that involved Rumpke. When I brought this up in July, Mifong indicated another attorney was handling it. And I understand that was Mr. Friedman. I got the impression at the last meeting in August from the video that the opinion on this had been issued, but was not going to be provided to the policy committee based on the fact that there was attorney-client privilege. So I'm just really confused about where our attorney-client privilege is and who it's with and who it's between. Because I had, at one point, I wanted to share some information with the city administration, but I was told by Mr. Friedman that I could not because it was under the county attorney privilege. But then, Mr. Kesterman sends somebody else here, and so, as his representative, when you couldn't make that meeting, you sent a representative, so does that representative now have the attorney-client privilege? And am I allowed to now discuss attorney-client privilege things with the city manager? That's kind of what.
Mifong, could you weigh in?
What topic are you talking about specifically?
And so really the question is the committee counseled by and protected by attorney-client privilege with NIFOM, or with Michael Friedman, or only one of them, or neither of them?
My office is very large. I'm your attorney. Michael Friedman handles public record requests, and he's actually the attorney for the commissioner. So that request came in through Michael Friedman. Do you understand that? You're looking at me oddly.
Right, no, because Michael Friedman, where I've had communications with him, he had said our communications were under the client attorney privilege.
I didn't say that. I just said, I am your lawyer for this committee.
For the policy
For the
committee.
policy committee. Michael Friedman is the attorney for the commissioner. That's what I just said.
Okay.
What is your question?
So when the conflict of interest for Tony, you had said, when we couldn't get it, we should have our own opinion. So, how do we get our own opinion?
You just received a letter from Jeff Aludo, the county administrator.
Yeah.
And the prosecutor's office stands by Mr. Aludo's opinion.
But this isn't a legal opinion, and this doesn't have any references to laws or statutes, or even the attorney who wrote it.
That is from the county administrator.
So will we get the actual opinion?
This committee falls under the commissioner. So, and the county administrator was talking to Michael Friedman, and that's how this letter came up.
But this isn't a legal opinion. Will we get the legal opinion that Mr. Kesterman had motioned for?
This is what you received. If you have any other questions.
I do. I want a legal opinion. This is not a legal opinion.
Then you need to.
This is a memo.
That's a memo from the county administrator. That's how he chose to address this.
So can I just add clarity as to what we're looking at here?
Yes, go ahead.
So there was a request for, a legal opinion about the conflict of interest. There was an attorney-client privilege over that, so we were unable to share it.
Right.
And so what we were trying to do was to have a member of the policy committee ask for the opinion.
Right.
So that we could get access to the information that had been issued by the prosecutor's office. That's what's in front of us.
No, it's not. I want to
Well-
see the whole thing.
Oh, okay, but that is what's in front of us. The form that you're asking for, I would, again, I'm not an attorney, so I would rely on NIFOM. But what we were trying to understand was the opinion of the prosecutor's office related to Tony's appointment.
Right.
And so that's what we asked for, and that's what we received. But if there is,
And that's the summary that the county administrator submitted to this committee.
of the legal opinion that we
Of the
received.
legal opinion, which
Right.
part that he waived. That's what you received. So he chose not to give you the opinion that.
I would like to make a motion, I wanna reiterate, he made a motion that this policy committee would get our own opinions. It was seconded, and I would like to see our own opinion.
The opinion was done by Michael Friedman regarding the conflict of interest.
So is it impossible to get us an additional opinion from you as our attorney related to
It's
that?
probably gonna be assigned to someone else. That's something that Michelle can look into or talk to Michael Friedman, or you can talk to Michael Friedman, actually the attorney for the commissioners, to see how he wants to handle it. Because our office has never done like duplicate.
Then if we duplicate it, I just wanna see it, the real thing. I mean, this is kind of a summary, and all he says is it doesn't automatically disqualify him, but there's going to be more in there.
Okay, I don't, there's nothing nefarious going on here. We tried to respond to the request for the opinion, and that's what's in front of us. So I wasn't in charge of putting this on the table, so I don't know how to respond really, other than this suffices, as far as I'm concerned, as to, the legal opinion related to the appointment. I don't know how the rest of the board feels, and if you guys wanna ask for something different or a different format, then that's up to the board. But I am comfortable with what we have. But we can entertain a motion if you would like. And Greg is the author of the motion. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I work with Jeff, so I have confidence in what he's sharing. I understand what Sue's concerns are, interests are, in understanding revised codes and just being
wanna,
Get a copy of it?
I don't have a copy.
well, no, of course, because because it's underprivileged from the Board of County Commissioners, right? So what you're asking for, and maybe this was the intent of the original, motion, was to get an opinion that, just like we just got an opinion that was underprivileged, and Michelle waived the privilege so that we all had it,
Right.
so we could ask.
You could waive it, yeah.
Well, she could it wouldn't go to me, it would
Right.
go to her. Because we already got one, which is underprivileged also. So, okay, Nifong, so what we're asking for here, and I'm not gonna make the motion because, as I said, I'm comfortable with what we've got. But if we wanna entertain a motion, please clarify, the language.
Yeah, I would like to see, the policy committee's attorney providing an opinion on Tony's potential or perceived conflict of interest.
Let me clarify that. So that could be any attorney out of the prosecutor's office, not necessarily me. Right?
Right, well, yeah, if you're saying that that's an item that you just never do,
That's not,
yeah.
wow,
The legal
I'm
opinion.
really inundated right now.
Right.
It's just me doing environmental. I didn't know if you know that or not. I do it all. Unlike the city where everybody has many hats. I'm doing a lot. I'm doing a lot with public health, you can ask Greg. So it'll probably be assigned to someone else.
Okay.
So Michelle has been asking for legal opinions from the prosecutor's office. So could the motion, I'm not putting words in your mouth, but maybe Michelle is the one that asking for the legal opinion. We can, I don't know that it matters which prosecutor, gives us that legal opinion. She gets it, she waives privilege, and then we have access to that information.
Right.
All right, so would someone like to make that motion?
I'll make that motion.
So Michelle, you're asking for your legal opinion related to the appointment from the prosecutor's office.
Right, can have it.
We need a second? Is there a second? All right, any further discussion?
I just have a question, so.
Yep.
Unmuddle me here. So, it seems to me we're making a distinction that Mr. Friedman is the attorney, for, the commissioners. This, what we're motioning for can come from any attorney at the prosecutor's office, but that might be Mr. Friedman?
Could be.
It could be, yeah.
It's gonna be the same result. We're gonna get the same
Right,
information.
I get it.
It's just gonna take a different
But I
form.
just wanna see it, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if the opinion's not gonna change, but, anyway. Okay.
Right, I'm still, in my mind, the distinction between
For
an
some
attorney.
reason, the county administrator did not waive privilege, and he did it as a summary.
That's right.
That's what
Okay.
happened.
It's the forms that,
just asking to see it.
right. All right.
We're going in circles.
Yeah, it's a difference between the actual document and a summary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, we've had a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. All those opposed?
Abstain.
All right, thank you. Okay, now, to the upcoming meeting, I was in the middle of this, I think. November 16th, it's a Wednesday at 3 o'clock, at this location. Greg, am I right? Yeah? Greg's got a fancier boardroom, but, I think we'll stick with this one. All right, that's all we've got. I'm gonna ask for a motion to adjourn.
Just before adjournment,
Oh, no.
just real quick, 'cause
There's
it's
nothing
time.
real quick coming from you.
I know, real quick. I just want to remind us of public comment, some really good public comments that happened. A need for vision for the future as we're working on the plan. Do not stay with our heads in the sand. Responsibility to the public. Be a leader on these issues, and reduce our reliance on landfills. And there's some other comments, so I just want to thank the public for their comments. And there were many other comments that were made. Those were highlights, and I just want to thank the public for coming out and making their comments.
Thank you. All right, I'm gonna entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion. Second.
All right, everyone stand up, and that's an aye. All right.